Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. We've got our Salisbury City Council president in the house, Jack Heath. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Greg. Great to be here.
Now, I know you're not proud of this fact, but you are the most frequent guest that we have had here on One on One. No one has been on here more than you, and it's because you know so much and you're willing to tell us so much, and you're willing to explain to us how things work in this city. So we're counting on you to do that today with our city budget, which just was approved at first reading.
Yeah. I will say, let me start off by saying that it's the most difficult budget that I've had to deal with since I've been on the council, and for obvious reasons. With COVID, as everybody else has seen, our normal revenues are way down. And to be frank, if it wasn't for the federal government and the state, this past year would have devastated us. But we made it through that, and we had several big issues that we had to tackle this year. I'm sure you know that in the past, before this council, and actually going back quite a ways, the payroll for the city was pretty stagnant. And it created, along the way, a compression issue that we've had to deal with. And what I mean by a compression issue is that since we've started with the adjustments to the payroll since I've been on and Jake's been mayor, the people who have come on board are at normal, decent levels. However, what happens after several years, and I'll give you an example. After several years, we have fire service people that are doing the same job as a guy 4 years less than him, and the senior man is making $9,000 less than.
Right.
That's not right, and it really hit us this year. The personnel committees came to us and said, We've got some issues in this area, and we need to get them fixed. So we talked about it for a long while, and after the first presentation of the budget, we asked the mayor to go back and look at how can we adjust some of these things. Now we can't. There's no way that we could take care of everything this year.
Let me just cut in real quick, because the people don't understand the process. The mayor prepares the budget.
Correct.
He presents it to you all.
Correct.
And then you all go through and look at all the different items, and you're allowed to go back to him and say, what about this? We're hearing from people about this other thing.
Correct.
Maybe we need that. So there's a dialogue back and forth about the budget. So you
Right.
sort of rectify the details of the budget. But go ahead.
Right. No,
Yeah.
and that's good. And maybe I should take a second to explain how once we get to the budget. So when we get the budget, the first thing we do, we have a presentation from Keith on the financial health of the city.
Right.
And we developed that when I first got on the council. I asked them, in business, you have a certain model where you can look at 4 or 5 general slides and say, all right, this is the stability or this is the problem in the city.
Right.
So we do that. And the next thing we do is we talk to the personnel committees, which are made up of the employees in each of the departments.
Right.
And they come in with some recommendations, suggestions, and wishes. And then we begin going
Gotcha.
through the budget. Now, we used to, I don't know if you remember some of those budget meetings, they would last hours and then days. Well, we've changed that structure. I've asked them, we get the budget about a week and a half ahead of when we have to have our first meeting. And I've asked each of the council people to review the budget independently and then list their questions. So instead of going over it line by line, we go over those things where they have questions about it. I do the same thing, all
Right.
of us do. And that's how we have our generalized discussions. We complete the budget now in probably 4 or 5 days, 1 8-hour day and 2 probably 4-hour days, and then a final day for final adjustments.
But what I see too is, it used to be budgets were full of surprises. So they would come in and it would be like, well, we need $1 million for a new fire truck. They've always set the stage for you in advance, so there's not surprises. There's been dialogue about it. It's like, Remember the fire truck we've talked about? We're going to put it in the budget. So
Yes.
so that seems to help a lot.
It does.
Okay.
It does. And the other thing is, I trust Keith Cordery. It's like a CFO and a president of a company, and he's a no-nonsense guy. He's a numbers guy, and that's what you
Right.
need. So that helps too. But getting back to
The pay issue, yeah.
the pay issue, so we had to take care of that this year, and it was difficult. I know that they struggle because money just doesn't come from any place. Now, this year, on the revenue side, the assessed value of the properties has gone up. We haven't changed the rate this will be our 5th or 6th year where we haven't touched the rate, the tax rate. But the assessed values, which is what should happen if you're doing the things that make your city great. So the revenue from that side is up slightly, but not enough to cover all of our issues. And I'll talk about another issue that's coming up. But I think last year we did the same thing with the police. And the reason we have to do this, especially on the safety side, although it's not exclusive of Department of Public Works, et cetera, et cetera. So we took care of the police and their scales. And then this year, we've gone a long way to adjusting. It's not perfect. It's not where it needs to be yet. But as close as we could get this year. And the reason that we've had to do that, besides the fact that you want the best people taking care of the safety issues in your city, we were getting poached. It started several years ago by other agencies where they don't have the number of calls that we have.
Right.
Their rates, or their pay is a little bit better, and it's different.
Yeah, it's definitely a training ground.
It is, and that happens. But we still owe it to our people to make sure that it's as easy to stay here as it is to go someplace else. So that's what we've tried to do.
Yeah, you have a situation, our friend Amanda Pollock, who we've had on many times, she was basically the city engineer. She had a big title. But, she came in at one level, but she had so many skills, she was able to do so much. So then she leaves, and you want to replace her with someone who's like her. In the meantime, to get someone who's like her, the salary is huge, and it's hard to recruit.
It is very difficult to recruit. But the other side of it, and we found this, with Amanda, it takes a special kind of person to work in government, especially city government. It's really difficult, and we have a very good bunch of people that I'm proud to work for the city. The other issue that we had to deal with this year is our favorite subject of water treatment and water and sewer.
People love talking about sewer, but it really is, as you said in one of the hearings, we're still paying for the sins of the 1990s, early 2000s when we got bad advice on what kind of sewer plant to get.
Right. Whoever, and we're not going, I don't really care. We're stuck with it. We're
engineers
here.
smarter than us suggested a different thing than would work.
A laboratory proven
right.
system, and it didn't work.
Right.
And we are paying for that, and we will continue to pay for that. Next year we have a big ticket coming, so next year is going to be a tough year as well. But I want to take a minute to explain that even if your general fund is healthy, it doesn't affect your ability to take you can't take the general fund money and apply it to water and sewer.
Right. Two very different.
Two totally different. It's
entities.
Separate, right.
Yeah. There's the city, and then there's the city sewer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that, like we're still paying. The health of the water and sewer is $1 million worse than it was last year. And you can't, and I think you remember that we had some consultants come in 4 years ago or 5 years ago now and say, listen, you need to raise water and sewer 15% now.
Right.
And at the time, we were struggling, our people were in the city were struggling, and some of them are still struggling.
Coming right out of recession time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we said, no, we can't do that. And I think the first year we did 2%. And last year we did 6%. And this year, 6% was requested again. But considering the information that we had about the health of that area,
and when you say health, there's nothing wrong with the treatment of the water.
No.
Yeah, it's the financial health of the system.
Correct.
I just want to make sure that's clear.
Thank you for clearing that.
Yeah.
So we suggested, the council suggested, that we raise it 8%. Now, let me also clear it up what 8% means. 8% sounds like a huge number. 8% for the minimum usage is about $2.04 a month. So we'll gain and pick up some of what's still left to pay for
Right.
this year, which then decreases the amount that we're going to have to raise next year. And next year we have debt coming through and due. So we're going to have to probably refinance next year. And at some point in time in the next several years, we should get out of we should be finished paying for the atrocity that took place back in the 90s.
Right. And one aspect, too, that's coming along, and this is an inevitable thing that people don't want to talk about or think about, there is a Wycomico County sewer plan. But at some point, some of these areas that are now on the city borders or out of town are going to have to tap into the Salisbury system, whether they want to or not.
Well, yeah. The issue there is that we don't have a sewer district anymore. Like, for instance, if you take Loblolly down in that area where you have county in the middle of the city.
Right.
We still had provided sewer and water, but their rates were higher.
Right.
Well, we don't do that anymore. The existing ones we recognize. If you want to connect to water and sewer now, you have to be annexed into the city.
Right.
Which means you have to be contiguous with the city properties.
Right.
So that's going to be that we're not going to be able to help people, Pittsville and those.
Right.
They have their own issues and areas. There's only Fruitland, us, Pittsville, Hebron, and then so the county is going to have to. And I talked about that when I ran for county executive.
Right.
So that's the number one issue that's facing the county.
And they have a plan now.
Yeah, they have a plan.
But, that Old Ocean City Old Road corridor where there's failing septic systems, you ride back there and you see people with mound systems in their front yard. Yeah. It's approaching a crisis phase because these houses are 50, 60 years old. They need replacement septic. There's not enough room in the backyard for that. They can't get the permit. They're going to have to go into the city, and they don't want to.
Yeah. Well, we can touch on that for a second because that brings up another issue. They don't want to come into the city because they don't want to pay city taxes.
Right.
However, because then their taxes go up, and then it brings up the question of, which nobody wants to talk about, tax differential or tax offset. Because whether people want to deny it or accept it, there are certain functions that are performed by the city employees that the county employees don't have to take care of.
Right.
The simplest one is roads. The amount of roads we have in the city compared to the amount we actually have more roads, more miles, and we're still paying the total assessment for the county.
The people in the city are paying for the roads in the county.
Correct.
Right.
And we should pay for the roads outside of the city limits. So that is an example of, but there's many other issues that fall in the same place. So that's one issue. And we need to get that resolved as well. And it's a tough. I understand it's a tough subject, but when you have the city who essentially struggles to meet the needs financially, it makes a big difference.
Right. I think that was going to be my point, that maybe when there's more people contributing to the sewer budget, maybe that will help things in terms of the financing of the sewer and the rates.
Yeah, and the other thing that's going to help, here is home.
Right.
Now, here is home, and I'm not saying that we're going to get 8,000 units, but there's 8,000 units that were requested
Yeah.
to be built.
In the pipeline.
Even if you get half of those, 4,000 units,
Right.
that's a significant amount of property tax income, which then helps, and the water and sewer. So it'll help on the general fund side, but it'll also help on the water and sewer side.
Right. Now, from readers, when you've raised the sewer rates,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard any complaints. And people love to complain to me about stuff, but I guess they call you and not me.
Oh yeah, oh
Okay.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. What are you doing 8%? That's ridiculous. I said, do you know how much 8% is? And they say, no, but it's a big percentage. I said, yeah, it's a big percentage of a small number in reality.
I mean, I hear landlords complain because they're having to pay it for their customers.
Right.
But I don't hear regular citizens complaining.
Right. Well, that's the other dilemma that I have. We have a significant part of the population that falls in the poverty level or just above it. And every time we raise the rate, they're the ones that suffer the most. So we don't take, when we do things and raise taxes or raise fees, we don't do it willy-nilly. We know that those, for the average business person, for instance, $2 a month,
Right.
what does it mean?
Right.
But for those people who are equal in value to everybody else in the city, it's a lot of money.
Right.
And that keeps you up.
I do that today in history column for the paper. So I learned things that I forgot as a kid that I used to read about. And one of the things in this week was there was a budget crisis, and they had kicked the can down the road too long, kind of like what the county did, you know, when that thing hit the fan. But there had to be a 4 or 6 cent property tax increase in 1 year to cover some problems. And Dow Truitt lost re-election.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
because they were not able to make the changes they needed to do previously. Do you think about stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. Let's take...
Not about losing the election so much,
No,
but
no,
about making sure that you're being proactive when you need to be.
When I first got on the council, and the presentation started to come up with the plan for improvement in infrastructure, all the people generally, people generally are very interested in visual. They want to see what they're paying for.
Right.
Well, a 106-year-old pipe made of wood
Right.
under the ground
On East Main Street.
is not sexy.
Right.
And they don't want to look at it, and they don't want to admit, but the amount of infrastructure that we've done has been remarkable. And I'm not just talking about Main Street.
Right.
You got the same thing on Fitzwater Street. You've
Right.
got the same thing. I mean, every time you dig in this city,
You find
you
something
find
wrong.
something. You find something. So I think that people have to understand that. I think it was Mir Boda said it best. He said, "We're paying for the sins of the past," and if you keep kicking it down the road, eventually somebody's going to end up having to pay the piper. And when I leave, I don't want to leave anything that we could have taken care of. So we're trying to do it in a sane and orderly manner. And you're right though, it does upset people. They think everything should stay the same. We should get the same services that we have. Look at our fire department budget year over year. Look at our calls that we do year over year. We're the prime source for shortages in the surrounding areas if there's a problem. Now, we also have mutual aid that if we're so busy in the city,
Right.
and they'll come in and help as well. But generally, it's us going outside of the city limits. So that's a key.
Yeah, you talk about the fire department, and not to be too anecdotal, but everybody was like, always like, oh, Salisbury thinks they're so special they have to have paid firefighters. And my argument was, well, yeah, the city burned down twice.
Yeah.
So it's kind of in the culture that maybe
Yeah.
you need some paid guys around, and it's really like the average shift's like only 8 guys. It's
Yeah.
not, it's not a lot of paid people.
Yeah.
But now you see the volunteer ranks suffering where they are
There's
considering hiring more and more paid people because it's essential now.
There's issues.
Yeah.
There's a serious issue with, when I first applied for the Fruitland Fire Department, when I first moved down here, there was a waiting list of
Right.
18 people.
Right.
And the only reason I got in was because of my experience in another state. Now, they're struggling. And the scary part about it is that if the volunteers, and we have volunteers, we have 15 or 16 volunteers at headquarters now. But what's scary about it is if no one volunteers and they have to go full paid,
Yeah.
that's 60 mil.
Yeah.
$60 million, roughly.
Right. Who's going to pay for that?
Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
All these things. I tend to think about them because I was just trained to think that way. But there are some serious issues that have to be taken care of and addressed.
Yeah, the old days, a municipal job was you were willing to take less money because they got every holiday off. They had great benefits. But now in so many careers, you do get every holiday off and you've got great benefits.
Yep.
So they're competing in an area that they didn't have to compete in anymore previously for talent. And as government becomes more like business, there's more pressure in government than ever.
Absolutely.
And people don't recognize that, I don't think.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, as a lot of people are wondering, where are all the people that used to work? And I mean, it's crazy. It doesn't make sense. Logically, it doesn't make sense. They didn't like their job. They quit their job. Where are they?
Right.
How they living? I don't understand it. And I think every broadcaster on TV has said the same thing. Where are those people?
Well, we were at Health Council this week, and Steve Leonard, the head
right.
of Title Health, said, "Where did they go?"
Right, absolutely. and it's, I mean, I started working when I was 15 years old, and I haven't stopped. So those, like you refer to the young people, the younger people just don't seem to want to get involved outside of the scope of their bubble.
When you first started coming on the show, whatever it was, 6, 7 years ago, 7 years? 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And we talked about the city had so much momentum at that time, and there was a concern like, all right, so what are we going to do for our next act? How are we going to keep this momentum going? There was worry about that, but we have, and just right now, there's so much momentum on things like the simple things like the folk festival. I can't wait for that to come now.
Yeah.
We've got the Copeland music event that's going to come that we never could have established something like that before. The transformation downtown is incredible. I can't wait to see what happens with Eastern Shore Drive. Of course, I love the traffic circle. I love the bridge. There's the Riverwalk. There's just so many great things that we've done, and more great things are going to keep coming.
Yeah, they are. And that's why it's important for us to keep our eye on the target. It's easy to get complacent, but we're lucky. We've got a group that really care about the city and not about their individual, what's in it for me. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be the city council president and watch the things that we've all voted on. And the mayor has done a fantastic job. He's got a great staff. We had a big loss with Amanda, and you're right. We're struggling to find how we're going to pay the price that people are requesting to even interview with us.
For the job that she created.
For the job that yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
Through her talent.
Yep.
You run the council meetings. They're very frequent. You talk about things before they even get talked about in detail, which is always great. Great public access. PAC 14 broadcasts them all. You guys have kept the Zoom element going so people can participate remotely.
Yep.
And that seems like it's gone really well.
It is. It was, out of all bad things, some good things come out of it. And I think the ability for people to Zoom in. I've gotten several calls from people with disabilities, for instance, that said that's fantastic. We don't have to get into the lifts onto the van and then get down there, and all we got to do is turn the Zoom meeting on. And it also allows, let's say, in inclement weather, we can run a meeting
Right.
from anywhere and have everybody watch it, and it could be, a foot of snow outside, which hasn't happened yet, but
Right.
it could. It
Right.
could. So.
All right. So budget time, budget ending. How can people get a hold of you to get their final thoughts in, or they want to harass you about the sewer rates?
My information is on the website, the city website, and there's a whole section on council.
It's a
And
great website, easy to use.
It is. It's probably one of the simplest
Right.
websites. So if you go to city council, and that goes for all the council members, there's a picture of us. In case there's a picture. Mine's not that young, but anyway, the rest underneath it has the email address and also has the phone number. And if I'm in a meeting or something, leave a message. I will get back to you. I've gotten back to everybody that's left a message since I've been on the council, and more than willing to do it.
Jackie, thank you for your service. Thank you for being here today. We really appreciate it, and good luck as you continue on.
Thank you, Greg. Appreciate it.
He's Jack Heath. He's president of our Salisbury City Council, and we're thrilled he had time to be with us here today. I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. Another edition of 101 right here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.